Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Table brought to you by the Blue Stable. I'm once again your host, Luke Furcamp. Tonight I had to wear my Cardinals hat. I know it's football season, but they just clinched the NL Central, so I had to bring. Oh, Theo, you got that Brewers hood or sweatshirt
It's
on.
tough. Yeah. Y'all had a good win yesterday, but
I
we're
love.
almost there. We gotta cheer on the Cubbies for them to beat the Phillies in order to make the wild card. So I don't think it's
Ooh,
gonna happen, but
yeah, that's going to be tough. Um, yeah, I love. There were some people that were like showing the Brewers tweet from like back in June. They're like, "Oh, we can't hear you from like the bottom, from where we're at on the top of the NL
oh my god.
Central," and it's like, "Oh, well,
It's
it's a
only
shame."
gone downhill from there. It really has.
I gotta say, I know it's just baseball, but um, I thought like I got more into baseball again this year just because like I really enjoyed watching baseball whenever I was a kid. And Pujols was on the team, and now Pujols is back, and he hit the 700th just last week. Like I'm enjoying baseball again. I'm hoping
I
this is the
mean,
year they can just finish it out right off into the sunset.
you could be the most sour rival to the Cardinals and still find that so cool that Pujols
Yeah,
achieved that. Like the run that he's been going on at the
it's
end, like near the
ridiculous.
end of the season. Who expected that? Like he signed with the Dodgers and people were just shrugging their shoulders at it. It's like, oh, he would be a cool addition just to kind of pop in the roster. And now he goes to the Cardinals and all of a sudden it's like 2012 all over again.
Yeah, he's revitalized. Like, okay, hey, I ain't complaining though.
Let's switch the
Oh,
topic to football now,
yeah,
though.
yeah. Let's move on to football. It's week four. It's week four. Um, All right. So tonight we're going to talk with a brand new segment that's called Fact or Fantasy. Um, Theo's the one that brought this idea up, and I was just trying to think of names, and Fact or Fantasy came, and we're like, hey, it's too good not to do at this point. Like, like we're fully invested. Um, but before that, we're going to talk about some news and notes. Zach Wilson is slated to start week four. I know we've been talking about Joe Flacco off and on about how he throws a more wide receiver friendly ball. And he might, but it also could be that he throws like 50 times a game too. I mean, either way. But if they keep this passing offense up, like Zach Wilson has a good chance to succeed just because, I mean, if you throw that many passes, you're going to get fantasy points eventually. Like, um,
Yeah, Joe Flacco is one of like the top of the list in pass attempts this year.
I
As
think
however,
I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet that said that he was on pace for like 820 or something like that. And they're like, obviously breaks a record. And I was like, good gosh, that is just insane if that is true.
yeah, and it's
Uh,
really helped Garrett Wilson's fantasy value as well as Brees Hall's, the two rookies. Um, they've been coming out there, they've been getting a pretty heavy target share. It's going to be interesting to see Zach Wilson and how much his play style changes the offense. If they scheme up more passing play, well, you can't really pass more
I
than
gotta
what
say,
the
can you
Jets are
pass
doing
more
right
what they're
now.
doing?
But I guess the right word is passing just the same, or maybe even less. Maybe they'll trust Brees Hall to take some more carries as Zach Wilson's is starting to heal and he comes onto the field for week 4.
Yeah, Joe Flacco has thrown 155 passes so far this
Oh,
year.
like already.
Yeah.
That is, oh my
Next
God.
highest is Kyler at 141. So he's thrown 14 more than the next. That's something. That's a stat. But yeah, I know like Elijah Moore has had a down start to the year than what people were thinking. But like going back to last year, Zach Wilson actually targeted Elijah Moore on a lot of his routes run. But I mean, obviously, this can change with Garrett Wilson being there. Garrett Wilson is definitely the better talent than what Elijah Moore is at wide receiver. So Garrett Wilson should still probably get a lion's share of the targets, but Elijah Moore might come back with Zach Wilson back, and instead of like Tyler Conklin getting like 10 targets a game, instead of Brees Hall getting 11 targets a game, maybe a few of those go from those guys over to Elijah Moore, and he's actually going to be like fantasy relevant again. Um, that's my hope anyway. Like I have Elijah Moore in Dynasty. I really like him as a player. Um, but it's just such a like the offense looks so good from the outside. You got Brees Hall, you got Elijah Moore, you got Garrett Wilson, but it's the quarterback situation isn't great there.
I kind of hoping that Tyler Conklin becomes the next Dalton Schultz this year and finishes somewhere like in the top 6 in tight ends. It's so doable for how the
Oh
tight end
yeah,
position is right now
it's
and
so bad.
how much they're passing the ball. It could easily happen. So I know he's a big waiver wire target this week. He was also last week, but not as many people picked him up. This week he's definitely on a lot more people's radar. Uh, if he's still out there in your league, that's a good stash if you are not too comfortable with your tight end position, which I imagine a lot of people aren't right now.
I gotta say, unless you have like one of the top guys, like you should be picking him up. Like if he's
Mhm.
out there, you pick him up just because like volume is always king in fantasy football. And if you're getting 10 targets a game as a tight end, like you got to take that. Sammy Watkins got put on the IR. And I tell you what, Romeo Dubs just absolutely took that and ran with it. He
Love it.
looks, I got to say, he looks like the Packers wide receiver one. Like to me, it seems like they want to get him more involved. Like all that off-season hype seems to have translated into the actual regular season now. Um, I hope it keeps up because it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, right now I would say that he is the number one guy that I would want as in the Packers wide receiver core. Uh Before the season, I was expecting Lazard to be that. Um and as Watson missed more practices and Dobbs continued to shine in training camp, they kind of sort of evened out. I know everybody was more Watson than Dobbs, but as soon as the season started, I was pretty like even on Watson and Dobbs, and Dobbs has done nothing but prove himself to be a pretty nice asset to Aaron Rodgers. And I'm excited to see what they do for the rest of the season and how his season plays out as a rookie, because if he finishes anywhere like above expected, which he's on track to, that's a great long-term deal if you're a dynasty player, or if you're in a redraft. That's another great wide receiver to look out for, to kind of remind yourself, put it in your notes app, write down the name and look for his name for next year.
Yeah, I gotta say, Dobbs, he's already leading the Packers in targets and receiving yards for the Packers. So that's great to see if you have him on your team. If you don't, see if you can maybe buy low on him. Like his name still isn't like the biggest yet. Um, if you can get like somewhat of a good deal with him, I take the risk just because he is going to be one of Aaron Rodgers' top options this year.
And Tunyon hasn't been the touchdown vulture I expected him to be. And
Yeah,
he's
that's been
just
really
kind of,
odd.
yeah, very lackluster, dropped in a lot of leagues. But this Dobbs resurgence, I love it.
Yeah, and J.K. Dobbins has returned to the field, but on Wednesday he's limited with a chest injury. Uh, it just seems like it's never meant to be that Ravens running backs are supposed to stay healthy. Going back to the start of last year, they have not had good health success with their running backs.
Yeah, I believe Justice Hill outsnapped J.K. Dobbins this past weekend. But I'm
Harbaugh had a
expecting,
good comment for him too. He said that he like I forget what the exact comment was, but it was like he ran like a good rusher or something like that, like a good
for
running back
Hill or Dobbins.
for Hill.
Yeah, I mean, he played more snaps and he was actually decent. J.K. Dobbins, though, is of course the better talent, I'd say. And I see his snap share going up slowly in the next coming weeks. He probably won't reach above 60% until like late in the season. And you might even have Gus Edwards come back and bring that percentage down to 50-50. So Dobbins is a very weird player in fantasy. So if you're really desperate in running back, you're going to keep him. But if you don't want to spend the time and energy debating on whether starting him or not, then it makes sense to just try to find a trade partner that's willing to take on Dobbins.
Yeah, I definitely agree that he's kind of like a weird case right now. Like to me, like redraft, you just kind of have to like almost take what you get. But like Dynasty, I'm almost trying to buy low on him because normally with like these ACL type injuries, like the year after they come back is always better than the first year of return. Um, so like, and people I don't think realize how crazy his like injury was last year, but he not just tore his ACL, he tore like his PCL and his hamstring as well. So it's not like he's just coming back from the ACL injury like normal like football players do from those kind of injuries. He has other ligaments that he needed healed and stuff like that. So that kind of slows down the recovery time. And so they're going to ease him back in. They're not just going like, hey, you're going to get 20 touches a game now, like type player.
Yeah, and I think as long as the Ravens offense continues to be as explosive as it is, I think that's really going to help Dobbins as like week by week basis. But if you do see that Ravens offense slow down, it could be worrisome for Dobbins. I really think so.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. David Montgomery is considered day to day after initial test. They said that's a very good sign from what they thought it was going to be. Um, I know we're going to talk about it later, but Cleo Herbert went off for them. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, so keep an eye on that if you picked up Cleo Herbert this week with waivers, because I know he was a hot ad this week. If for some reason he was on waivers in your league, um, but yeah, just keep an eye on this news, see if he ends up trying to play this weekend. If he doesn't, Cleo Herbert, you should start him.
Yeah, I mean, heading into the season, I know I've said this before on the show. People are saying how Khalil Herbert fit the Bears system better than Montgomery, and last week proved it. He scored, I believe, what was it, 30.9 points. I think that was PPR, I believe.
Yeah.
That's more than I saw a tweet. Sorry, I can't credit to whoever said it, but they said that was more than Montgomery has ever gotten in a single game in PPR. And for Herbert to come in and do that as soon as Montgomery goes down, it's going to be a fun start for next week.
Yeah, I almost like I don't wish like anybody not to play, but I almost want to see Herbert get a full game to himself like this
Yep.
year. Like
And
I know we saw it last year, but
what did they say? So Montgomery's day to day. Do you think they would sit him out for the whole game, or do you think there's going to be a limited participation in there?
I gotta say if he can't play, they're not going to play him. If like he can play at all, I'm sure they're going to play him because I mean he's their guy. They're going to play.
Yeah.
And Dalvin Cook had his yearly dislocated shoulder. They said they're going to put the shoulder device, whatever it is, on him for this next week. So he probably will play, but if not, Alexander Madison's going to be the guy, just like Cleo Herbert.
Yeah. Don't have much to say about this one. Madison's probably on everyone's lineup because of Cook's injury history. Um, Interesting game in London, I believe, against the Saints. So sad the Queen couldn't see Kirk Cousins play football. That's all I gotta say, I
And
guess.
Jameis Winston
And Jameis Winston.
with his back problems.
Still don't matter though.
He's going to eat the dub there. Uh, this one is honestly kind of a crazy thing to talk about, but Brian Robinson is possible to return week 5. Like, man, this guy got shot in the like got shot twice, multiple times. And like I saw the practice video, I'm sure a lot of other people did too, and he looked pretty good, like for a guy that just got shot. Um, for a possible return week 5, I'm definitely keeping that on my radar. And if you have any like sort of stash spots on your roster, I would try to be stashing him wherever I can. Um, Gibbs' season was short lived this year once again. Um, he started out really strong, but Gibson still seems like they don't trust him enough to give him all the snaps and all the rushes. So I'm sure they'd be willing to be starting Brian Robinson over Gibson as soon as they can.
Yeah, and if you see the trend that's been happening over the past past weeks, you've seen McKissick get more snaps, and then you've seen Gibson's snap share slowly declining. And I don't know if this is in preparation for Brian Robinson's return into the offense, sort of accommodating a second back, that's or making sure that Gibson's sort of getting comfortable in his role with a less than 50% snap share. But
I think a lot of like this past week, like I mean, I know a lot of people are going to like see the past week's snap share, but like the Commanders are getting blown out.
that's true.
Like
That's true.
that's not really a competitive game. They were coming from behind. So that's why JD McKissick's in there a lot because he is their receiving down back, which makes no sense because Gibson used to be a wide receiver.
Yeah, I whatever. I mean, they did that weird thing with the Bills in which they somehow offered a better contract to
They
McKissick or
yeah they matched the offer
matched it.
sheet or whatever it was and got him back. I don't know. It was weird. They wanted him bad though if they matched whatever the Bills gave him.
Yeah, but Brian Robinson in that offense, I'd watch Gibson's snap share. If it does increase, then the speculation of them trying to fit Brian Robinson or accommodate Brian Robinson into that offense is kind of it's just kind of gone. There really is none. But if you do see Gibson's snap share kind of stay the same, decline, Brian Robinson, like Luke said, should be on your radar.
Yeah, I just hate it because like you can see the talent with Gibson is just that fumbling issue is just always going to haunt him. Mac Jones has a high ankle sprain. I'm sure a lot of people saw the photo on Twitter or social media of him like screaming whenever he was being carried into the locker room. Um, he's likely to miss multiple games. If he does, that means Brian Hoyer is going to be starting, which just makes this offense even more ugly than it was already.
Yeah, they're talking about the new surgery for ankle sprains, the tightrope surgery. I can't really go into depth. I'm not a doctor, but it's a new surgery. Hopefully, it's supposed to increase the healing time and it's supposed to make sure that that ankle is secured and doesn't get re-injured after a sprain or make it feel too uncomfortable, but it does require a recovery process. And this Patriots offense, it's not even too heavily invested in. I mean, not many people even have Mac Jones on their roster. I can't imagine someone who does, but like the only
Two quarterback
players,
leagues is the only thing I can think of where you would be wanting
yeah,
to have him.
the only players that you would possibly see in a starting lineup from this Patriots offense is Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, maybe Jacoby Myers. I know Devontae Parker had a good game, but no one was starting Devontae Parker for that good game. So uh somewhat it's news in the NFL, but fantasy land, not too much. So I guess.
I gotta say, to me, this just means like I'm not starting Jacoby Myers anymore. um,
Yeah, if
because
you are, yeah.
yeah, I gotta say Jacoby wasn't a bad start just because he was getting a 30% target share, but like now with Brian Hoyer, I don't know if I want a 30% target share of Brian Hoyer.
What about the running backs? Would you care for any of the running backs to start, even with the Brian Hoyer led offense?
See, I feel like they're going to lean more on the run with Brian Hoyer. At least that's what I would do if I can. Like I'm trying to keep it out of Brian Hoyer's hands as much as possible. But the weird thing is that like it seems like it just flips weeks on who gets more snaps and who gets more touches out of that backfield. So it's like I feel like I want to mind flexing him. I'd prefer Ramondre over Harris, but that's just me. Um, but I'm sure there's better options with higher upside than those
Oh
guys.
yeah, for sure.
Sterling Shepard, man, I feel so bad for him just because he's had such bad injury luck, and he's been showing like very good talent these past couple of years. But he tore his ACL. He's out again once again this year. Um, I know Odell Beckham's been trying to push for all grass fields instead of turf. Um, it's just unfortunate injury luck for him.
You saw the video in which where he tore his ACL, right?
Yeah,
That's they need to scrap MetLife. MetLife Field is
it's so
just
bad.
you saw. I know Saquon was complaining about it too. It's not good for any player whatsoever, but it's unfortunate.
It's
He
like the
was
49ers practice field where everybody gets hurt for some
yep.
reason.
Giants wide receivers. He was probably the only one that was getting any good quality fantasy points. Kadarius Toney now probably see some increase, but maybe not. It's just
He's in the
that Giants.
doghouse. It seems like
Yeah,
they don't want to throw to him for some reason.
that Giants offense. The only thing that is Saquon for fantasy, so and NFL.
Yeah, I know I mentioned on our waiver thread that Richie James is maybe an interesting name to pick up. I know he's second, I believe, in the team in targets behind Sterling Shepard. Um, Kenny Galladay just does not look good. He's getting paid 80 some million to drop the ball whenever it's right in his chest. Yeah, like we said, Kadarius Toney in the doghouse. I guess Wandale Robinson maybe gets a little bit of a boost with this potentially.
Maybe
Hopefully, just some sort of life, something good.
now with Daniel Jones at QB.
Hey, I got Barkley on my team though. As long as he keeps doing what he's doing, I'm fine
Oh
with it.
yeah,
And then the last little injury news: Hunter Renfro, Jonathan Taylor, CMC did not practice. Um, I know a couple of those, like Hunter Renfro still has a concussion. We mentioned in our waiver to pick up Mac Hollins just in case Renfro is out. He would be a good spot start for you. Jonathan Taylor is most likely going to play. It was just Wednesday rest day. CMC had a quad injury. Rule did not really want to speculate on that. I know CMC last week, he was like, yeah, if I go to the bathroom, like I'm going to be on the injury report. Just how it is for him. And then also Tua with, for some reason, a back and ankle injury, though I thought it was a concussion, but I guess maybe it's not. He's questionable for Thursday night. So you're watching it on Thursday. Hopefully you get news by now. If not, make sure to keep watching out because that could impact you if you're trying to start Tua.
yeah. With the CMC, I don't know if it's whether the Panthers operation that does it, but if they're like really strict on what they see as an injury or like willing to be put on the injury report. But man, it's just CMC popping up, but it scares me. It scares me for like the future of the season. I mean, heading into next week, it doesn't scare me, but when it's week 10, week 12, and the playoffs are right on the horizon, it's those injuries, they can catch up, especially in this long NFL season.
Yeah, anytime you see CMC in the injury report, you know it's like you just feel it in your heart. Like especially if you had CMC on your team these past couple years, like you just feel that dread come over you. And as always, we gotta have that little funny thing. The Falcons finally start throwing to Kyle Pitts, and guess what? They won a game. What about that? What do you know? What do you know?
I talk about Kyle Pitts later and Factor Fantasy. subject, but it's nice. It's nice to see that he finally gets targeted enough times to have some production. And when you look at that, Arthur Smith, fantasy football does win you games.
Yeah, it's like I feel like it was just like it's just so obvious that you need to throw to one of your best players. But they finally did it. This is why we kept saying to buy low on him, buy low, keep him, don't drop him, don't trade him. Hold on. It's coming. And then a couple of news, like not really news, but storylines that I wanted to talk about is less is more, and more with two O's, because all these Moores, DJ Moore, Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, you probably drafted those guys back in late August thinking, oh, you did great. You did good. You thought it was funny. And they're all good players anyway, so it's going to be really good. And it's just been abysmal. Rondell Moore has yet to play a game. DJ Moore has once again a mediocre bad quarterback. And Elijah Moore is not getting targeted, what you would think.
Now, out of all of those three, if you were to level them out based off of expectations heading into the season, which one has disappointed you the most?
I can't really say Rondell Moore because he's been hurt, and you can't really fault him at that because, like, you see what Greg Dortch has done, and that's probably what Rondell would have done if he was in the lineup. I think based on all of it was, it's not. I would have to say DJ because like Elijah, like he's still running a lot of routes. He's still having a high snap percentage. He's still doing all the things that you want. He's just not getting the targets from Joe Flacco. DJ, on the other hand, you thought he was going to have a better season this year with Baker Mayfield. You thought that it was going to be a slight quarterback upgrade to be able to get him a little more over that speed bump that was the 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns. And he's gotten a lot worse. Like you're drafting him as your high end wide receiver too, and he's not really even a flex play at this point.
Yeah, I'm benching him in most of my leagues in which I drafted him. I have other flex players that I would rather start over DJ Moore. So until he shows me that he can be a viable start, I'm not going to be playing him.
Yeah, I've been sitting him in my one league for Curtis Samuel because like
Yeah, that's
Curtis
good.
Samuel's been looking good. I'm going to be playing him. And last thing I want to touch on is Treilon Burks. I know it's not really like a trade segment or anything like that, but I think you should be trading for him as soon as you can. Weeks 1 and 2, I forget what the exact percentage was, but he was getting like a 37% target per route run. And now this past week, he ran 92% of the routes, which led the Titans. The Tennessee offensive coordinator said that he wants to get Burks more involved. All the signs are pointing that they're finally getting Burks more involved in this offense. They want to give him more targets. They want him to be the number one. They traded away A.J. Brown to get this guy. He's an elite athlete. He was drafted in the first round for a reason. I think now's the time to try to get him. He might, I'm not going to say he's going to be similar or anything, but he might have like that Amon-Ra second half season breakout that we saw last year for a rookie wide receiver.
I don't really have a comment on that. I mean, you seem to have done good research on this and you're pretty confident. So I have to take your word for it.
Yeah, I have Treilon Burks in my dynasty league and another league, and I've been seeing so many people hype him up, and a lot of these stats go through on my timeline, and I started looking up some myself. So I was like, "Yep, this is the guy." Like, they want him to be the guy. All right, well, time to move on to our fun segment, fact or fantasy. I am going to start off with my fun one of the day, and it's that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on pace to be the second lowest snap percentage among top 5 running backs in the season. Jonathan Taylor was the lowest from his rookie season whenever he took over from Marlon Mack later in the season. Now, Theo, do you think that is a fact or do you think that's fantasy?
CH on pace to be second lowest snap percentage out of all the top 5 running backs right now.
Well, I'm saying like he's a top 5 running back this year so far, and like out of the top 5 running backs from the previous seasons, he's the lowest like second lowest snap percentage behind Jonathan Taylor.
I'll say true.
It is actually fantasy. He is the lowest by far.
Okay, I see where. I was a little confused
it's kind of a
there.
little bit of a trick with the way I worded it, but he's currently running back 4 with a 41% snap percentage. 41%. He's not even playing half the snaps. The lowest top 5 running back snap percentage in the last 4 years was Austin Eckler with 57%. And that was in 2019, whenever he was basically a wide receiver that year. He got all of his fantasy production by targets, receptions, and receiving yards. And 8 receiving touchdowns helped quite a bit.
See, Edwards-Helaire is basically on doing the same thing, but less efficient.
7 carries for 0 yards. And a touchdown. It's weird, but he did it. All right. But I know we wanted to, before you move on, I know we wanted to say for a while now that CEH, you need to sell him while you can. Like, his snap usage is not what you want from your top running back.
Yeah, God, no, you don't want that. It's not. I definitely a sell now. People that aren't necessarily paying too much attention in fantasy, they'll see that he's a top 5 running back. CEH is back. Maybe they'll buy it, but who knows? For mine question, there is I'll start off with there are more 100-yard rushers after week 3 this year than there were last year.
So like last year through week 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Fact or fantasy?
100-yard rushers. So I know we had Saquon week 1, and then we had Cleo Herbert week 2. But there really wasn't much. Like, running backs is down this year compared to normal years. So I'm going to say this is fantasy or false.
It is true.
Wow.
There are 15 rushers over 100 yards rushing this season. Last year at this time of year, there were 12.
Wow.
It's kind of surprising because of how volatile running back has been. There hasn't really been that true consistent guy, except for James Robinson, who's looks to be touchdown dependent. But like, exactly, even then, he's got his flaws. You have all these running backs that haven't really shown like a true consistency throughout a whole season, but in total, there has been more 100-yard rushers than there has been last year at this time.
That's crazy to think about, because like running back scoring overall is just down compared to normal. Like, I know I saw like the top 5 running backs, and it's just not what anybody was thinking. Like, you have Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb, and then everybody else, pretty much. All right, so for my second one, it's not really a definitive yes or no, but it's Cleo Herbert has a higher ceiling than what David Montgomery has. Fact or fantasy? What's your opinion on this? Because it's more of an opinion than a fact.
Well, we did see how he performed and how well he performed in PPR, better than Montgomery has all throughout his career. That's tough because you see David Montgomery, you know how much the Bears value him. And that reason is the only reason truly why Cleo Herbert hasn't exploded onto the scene yet and has supplanted Montgomery as the RB1. I'm ceiling, if you're talking about this year, I'm going to say Montgomery has higher ceiling, because that could go for either options. I'm gonna go Cleo Herbert. They said that I say that Cleo Herbert has the higher ceiling. They said that he fits the offense better before the season, and he's done nothing but prove that to be true. So I'm gonna say Cleo Herbert higher ceiling than Montgomery.
Yeah, so that's the same for me as well. I said Cleo Herbert has a higher ceiling, and which I mean, it's almost unfair to David Montgomery because whenever Montgomery plays, like Cleo Herbert's always going to get snaps yet. But if David Montgomery goes down and Cleo Herbert starts, they're not really going to put in a second back in rotation like they do with Cleo Herbert. Um, but I went and did some stats. Cleo Herbert, he was a rookie last year, so far in his career, from last year and so far this year, he is averaging 4.95 yards a carry. David Montgomery, during that same time frame, so from the start of last season to now, is averaging 3.87 yards per carry. So Herbert is averaging over a whole yard a carry more than what David Montgomery is. This
And of
past,
course there's
yeah, go ahead.
oh, and of course there's a lot of factors into yards per carry.
Yeah.
It isn't like the one all be all statistic for running backs. But when you carry it over that long period of time and the sample size that they have given, I'm not sure how much Khalil Herbert's sample size is compared to Montgomery's, but I imagine it's somewhat you could use it. Like you could use it to make that judgment call.
Yeah, so David Montgomery had 260 carries and Cleo Herbert had 136.
That's definitely enough. That's
Yeah.
definitely enough to say that Herbert has the higher ceiling.
Yeah, I gotta say, I feel like, I mean, 136 carries, that's a lot of carries to figure out whether that's good or bad. Because like that's not just incorporating all of his good games, like all the games that he played, like 50% of snaps. That's all of his carries, like throughout his career so far. And he was a rookie last year, so it's not like he was already established last year. And then like we saw last week, I know we talked about it earlier, but Cleo Herbert had 157 yards last week on 60% of snaps. Montgomery, his career highest in a game is 146. This close, but it wasn't enough. He didn't hit that 150-yard mark. And then 30 PPR points, David Montgomery has never hit before. He's got 29 once and then a couple other 20-point games, but he's never hit that 30-point mark.
I guess I'll go up with my next question for you. Factor fantasy. Both Waddle, Waddle and Tyreek Hill lead the NFL in yards per route run.
Man, that's tough because like those guys, yeah, those guys
Same
are
team,
fast. Same
same.
team. Oh, jeez. But you got to think that maybe one other person slips in there. But I'm going to say fact because those guys have been pushing the ball down the field like crazy.
You are correct. It is a fact. Jalen Waddle has 3.98 yards per route run, which
Goodness,
is insane.
that is elite.
And Tyreek Hill has 3.48. He's second. So Waddle is a half a yard ahead of Tyreek. Both of them leading yards per route run on the same team. It's unheard of because you have these two wide receivers, elite wide receivers, run a route on same time, same play. So each time there's a passing play, they're both running routes that both counts for one route run. And both of them are top two in yards per route run, insane production, insane efficiency. This Dolphins offense is off the chain.
Yeah, it's like it's such a dream like fantasy offense. Like if like Tua's been great, like nothing wrong with Tua, but if you could imagine like Josh Allen on that team, like with those two guys, like oh, it'd just be a dream.
And
Uh,
it's the speed of them as well
Yeah,
that
they're so
just
quick.
I mean, there's not much else I can say than
Thank you, Mike
like,
McDaniels.
yeah, thank you, Mike McDaniels, really.
That's insane that like just getting like one of those getting one wide receiver on your team and like one of those leaders in routes yards per route run is really good. But to get two that are 1 and 2, that's crazy. Now for my last one, factor fantasy, only 2 teams have scored at least 26 points each game this year. And I will say the 26 points, like there has only been 2. But my factor fantasy part is, was it the Lions and the Bills? Do you think that's a factor fantasy?
Mm. Uh, what was the Bills score against the Dolphins last game? Did they score? I'm gonna say fantasy. I think it's another team other than the Bills.
Do you have a guess?
The Ravens.
I will say it was a fantasy, and it was both teams that were wrong.
Both teams that were okay.
Yeah. So the 2 teams to score at least 26 each week was the Browns, Jacoby Brissett led Browns, and this one like shocked me, the Falcons.
Wow, really?
Which I mean, I guess I get it because like Falcons are coming from behind every single game, so they got to try to score. But it still astonished me that those were the only 2 teams. Um, like I know going into the offseason, everybody thought like, oh, the Falcons offense is going to be like the Texans offense last year, where there's no real fantasy stars. But hey, Drake London's looked good. Kyle Pitts might be some. Cordero Patterson's still a guy. Marcus Mariota's not a bad streaming quarterback. I mean, it's not a bad offense.
Yeah, just based off that fact alone, that's more reasons to buy into this Falcons offense, no matter what their win column is. You get players based off of offensive production. You don't get players based off of 11 wins on the season, right? You have Saquon Barkley as the RB1, and I know the Giants are 2-1 right now, but
A week
I
two
I
and one.
still yeah, I still feel like they'll have like Saquon would have done the same thing even if their record was 0-3.
Right. Yeah.
You just
No, I
buy
agree.
players based off of how well their offense is doing, how well and how often they score. This Falcons team, what was the other team you said? The
Browns.
Browns. That one's surprising. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Amari Cooper.
David
They're actually
Njoku.
David Njoku too.
He's finally here.
Yep, I think he's gonna probably finish in the top 10 tight ends this year. Uh, both teams that I was, along with majority of the fantasy community, uh, kind of iffy on investing in, but now them scoring that many points, did not know that. That's pretty confident news to me.
Yeah, I gotta say I was shocked whenever I was like going through the weeks and seeing that. And another interesting fact is the Eagles, 3-0 Eagles, have scored only 14 second half points this year. 14 second half points. And all 14 of those points were scored week 1. They have scored 0 second half points week 2 and week 3. But they put them
That's
away
just
in the first half, I guess, but
yeah.
it's crazy.
Maybe that's just Sirianni coaching that team to be conservative in the
Yeah, they
second
probably
half
play a
after
more
the big
keep
lead.
away. Yeah. Yeah, just
But
keep away.
I mean, as the season goes on, that will definitely change. Uh, interesting statistic on that one, but that doesn't affect any of the fantasy players because they're all just going
I
crazy
gotta
right
say
now.
they're all still doing good.
So for my last one, I got 2 prepared. Would you rather have the Derrick Henry one or the Kyle Pitts one?
I'll leave it up to you. I know both are kind of like interesting players for us.
All right, I'll go with the Derrick Henry one. Derrick Henry is number one in fantasy points in the red zone per game. Fact or fantasy?
Number one, fantasy points in the red zone. Ooh, I'm going to say fantasy on this one. I feel like it's going to be like Nick Chubb or someone like that.
You are correct. It is fantasy, and you are also correct on who's first.
Ooh, I
Nick
like that.
Chubb is first in fantasy points in the red zone per game with 9.5 points, which is
Dude's a beast.
he's got 4 rushing touchdowns on the season.
And you know the
We know
crazy thing is, like last or whenever was it Thursday night last week that they played? Yeah, Thursday night last week. If Kareem Hunt gets like any of those touchdowns, he's probably not the number one guy for this stat.
that's true. I mean, also it's only been 3 games,
Was true.
but he's been punching it in pretty well, and he's easily one of the best running backs in the NFL right now, I would say.
Yeah, if it wasn't for like PPR formats, like, and it was just all standard leagues, like Kareem Hunt would be an easy first round lock, like without a doubt. Like the dude just produces on the ground. He's probably one of the best pure rushers in the NFL right now.
Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt? You say
Chubb.
Chubb? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guess
Nothing to Kareem Hunt, but
where Henry is placed on this list in fantasy points in the red zone
the
per
red
game?
zone per game. He really hasn't been that great this year. That's the thing. That's really like I almost want to say like 10-ish. I feel like he's kind of lower.
Are you looking at my
Is it really
He's
on there?
ranked 10. He's ranked
Oh
10.
my. Wow.
He's ranked 10 at 4.3 points per game in the red zone.
I got your screen share up.
I it's just for how big of a back he is, it's so weird to see him that low in this ranking because it's just Derrick Henry, right? You hear that name, you think he's going to be top 3,
Especially
but
in the red zone, yeah.
especially in the red zone, and he's not. He's just the Titans offense is very stagnant in that area, and it's slowing Derrick Henry's fantasy production. Am I scared about this for the future? Yes, I will say, yeah, I am scared because Derrick Henry hasn't shown to be that guy every game this year, especially in the red zone. And that is something that I would be on the lookout for. If you're sort of pretty confident in your running backs already without Derrick Henry, you might want to part ways with them. I know we've talked about that in the panic episode last week. He's just not playing his best football. I know he had a great game last week, but I'm just trying to keep recency bias away and go off what my eyes tell me. And what my eyes tell me is that he broke off for like 1 or 2 big runs. I'm always the person to say that you can't really discredit that from the running back if they break off for a 40-yard run because that's what they did. They're skilled enough to do it. They did it. And you just Derrick Henry off the eye test, it's sort of hard to see him starting to get just stopped like 2 yards after running the ball, like 2 yards ahead of the line of scrimmage. It's something that I'm not too confident in for his game.
Yeah, I gotta say that's why last week with the panic episode, I was like, I was kind of out on Derrick Henry for this season anyway, but like seeing him so far this year just leaves me a little more out on him. I do have a funny story, um, real quick, but I've been watching Fantasy Footballers because great podcast to listen to. You should go check them out if you haven't already. But they mentioned last week that they found a correlation between snow in Vermont and Derrick Henry having a good game. And last Friday, it snowed in Vermont, and Derrick Henry had a good game. So it still goes on. For some reason, I don't know how they figured it out, why it's a thing, but apparently it's a thing.
Look, I don't even know where to begin to find that correlation. You would have to be living in Vermont and recognize that.
Yeah.
That's the only case scenarios. There must have been like a call-in, email, a tip from one of their listeners that just said, hey, it's snowing in Vermont. I'd start Derrick Henry. And the fantasy football are like, what? What are you saying? But
yeah, you would think that it had to be like a guy living in Vermont, and they're like, man, it snowed again. And then they have Derrick Henry on their fantasy team. They're like, oh, Derrick Henry did really well. Just like it, I don't know. It's just such a funny like statistic, and it just happened to work out. And I was just like, okay, this is too good not to share.
Now, if I own Derrick Henry on my fantasy team, which I do in one of my leagues, I'm going to be looking at the weather report, the weekly weather report. So if I see it's going to snow in Vermont on Sunday and it's Wednesday, I am sending a trade, selling high on Derrick Henry and being like, yo, he's going to have a good week this week. Just trust me on this.
You got to trust. Yeah, you're just going to add Vermont as one of your like favorite like places on your weather app real quick. Oh my god. Yeah, too good.
That's all I got though.
All right. Well, that will do it for us today. We're trying to keep it under an hour. This time we're trying to hold ourselves to it. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Can't wait to be back with you guys next week, maybe next week. I will say that we may take a break because I am still like editing wedding photos and stuff like that. Got real life going on. So hopefully we'll be here, but if not, just so you guys know. But yeah, got anything else for everybody, Theo?
We'll be active on Twitter, more active next week if Luke ends up missing this next episode. So if you have any questions, any concerns, storylines that popped up and you want us to ask, feel free to DM or just add us on Twitter and send out the tweet. We'll reply publicly so other people who may have that same question can also see the answer.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. I know we kind of missed on some questions, and I apologize about that. I know we got some questions on our feed while I was at the wedding, and I did not respond. But we're going to be better at that. We're going to keep ourselves to that. So go ahead, ask us any questions you have, start sit, trade decisions, anything like that, and we'll answer those for you. But until next time, have a good day, good evening, good night, whatever time it is you're watching this, and goodbye.